Today, I'm testing the free subscription of Cursor, and to do that, I decided to build my own calendar app. I wanted it to be as simple as possible, fully local, no server, nothing fancy. Before jumping in, I wrote down everything I expected the calendar to include. Then, I opened Microsoft Copilot in Edge and asked it to turn my notes into a development plan. Once it generated the plan, I copied it and pasted it into the plan dropdown inside Cursor. Before that, I went to the model selector. By default, it was set to auto, but I switched it to Composer 1.5 because I'd read that it's Cursor's new model and supposedly very good. But when I tried to run the plan with it, I got a message saying that this model isn't available on the free subscription, so I switched back to auto. Cursor started building the plan interactively, which I actually liked. It asked how I wanted to store events. I got 3 options: Node.js with Express, a pure static site using a simple events.txt file, or storing everything in the browser using local storage. I chose the second option, the static site with events.txt. Later, I regretted that choice because it meant the user would have to interact with the file system manually. I tried to change it later, but that's a whole separate video. I added some extra information about how users should create new events. At that moment, Cursor told me there was high load and my request wasn't processed. I tried again, and eventually it accepted my latest update. Cursor then asked when the app should prompt the user to open or create the events.txt file. I asked if the app could create the file automatically. Cursor followed up by asking whether it should do that on the first save or even earlier. I chose the first save option. Cursor updated the plan. And asked if it could go ahead and start creating the calendar app. I approved, and it generated everything really fast. It also explained how to open the calendar page once it was ready. I ran the command in Cursor's terminal, opened the calendar in my browser, and started testing it. For a first attempt, it looked pretty good. The themes worked nicely. The backgrounds didn't work yet. Event creation worked fine. I wrap up my first round of testing the calendar app. A list of requests and questions starts forming in my head. I switch Cursor from plan mode to agent mode, paste the list into the chat, and click the arrow up icon to send it. My notes to Cursor. When I create an event using plus or plus add, and then click save, the modal should close automatically. Same for delete. Once I delete an event, close the modal. Button clicks don't feel responsive. Make it visually obvious when a button has been pressed. Remove the word optional from all fields. When the app shows a message, like confirming deletion, it currently uses a browser alert. Replace this with a custom pop-up or toast. The behavior of open events.txt versus new events.txt is unclear. I created a new file, events1.txt, selected it via open events.txt, but the calendar still showed events from the original events.txt. When I choose a background, nothing happens. Do I need to add BG1 and BG2 images myself? Add a button that jumps back to this month in one click. There seems to be a character limit in the title field. I can't type past a certain point. Add a character counter under the title field showing current characters /max allowed. Cursor processes the list and begins updating the code. After a few minutes, it reports back with a summary of the features it added. For example, a Today button that jumps to the current date, a character counter under the title field showing how many characters are used and the maximum allowed, It clarified that background images require me to add the actual files myself. And it asked if I want a tooltip explaining the events.txt behavior. I respond that yes, I want a tooltip, and I also want the events.txt file and the new file to be hideable/showable, controlled by an icon. Cursor updates the code again and provides another summary of the changes. Meanwhile, I created a few backgrounds using Google Whisk. I just noticed a message saying it will only be available until April 30, 2026, and then I'm encouraged to switch to Flow instead. That honestly bums me out. Flow is nice, but I really preferred Whisk's interface. Here's an example of the calendar with one of the backgrounds applied. I test the calendar again. As I continue testing the calendar, a new batch of issues becomes clear. I jot them down and prepare to send them to Cursor. My new notes to Cursor. The hamburger icon is sitting in the middle of the line. Move it to the top left corner of the page. When I save an event without a title, the toast notification appears under the gray background. It should appear in front. The pop-up that appears when deleting an event doesn't look good. Improve its design. The delete and save buttons are clickable, even when there's nothing to delete, no event in focus, or nothing to save. Disable them in those cases. Cursor updated the code again, listing each change as it completes it. While testing the calendar again, I notice more issues. I send Cursor another message. I'm not getting the red error message when I try to save an event without a title, the one I previously requested. Also, the save and delete buttons are still clickable, even when there's nothing to save or delete. Cursor checks the cause of both issues. Lines of code scroll by as it traces the logic, identifies what's missing, and begins patching the behavior. Cursor updates the code, then posts a summary of the changes it just made, detailing the fixes for the missing red message and the button disable logic. I run another round of tests on the calendar. Immediately, I notice the same problems resurfacing. I still don't get the red message when I try to save an event without a title. The save and delete buttons are still clickable, even when there's nothing to save. And now I see another issue. The events.txt file that's supposed to persist events isn't switching properly. Even when I change the file, the calendar keeps pulling events from the old one. Cursor updates the code again. I test the calendar, nothing has changed. I try asking Cursor once more why the behavior is still the same. Cursor tells me I've hit my free quota. I'm done for now. I have a final note about Cursor rules, something I didn't use this time, but that can lead to better results. Cursor rules can improve the output. To update them, open Cursor Settings. On Mac, Cursor, Settings in the menu bar. On Windows, File, Preferences, Settings. There are user rules for general preferences across all projects. For example, please reply in a concise style, avoid unnecessary repetition or filler language, and project rules that apply only to a specific project. You can write your own or browse existing ones at websites like cursor.directory. You can find more details about rules at Cursor's website. In short, Cursor is excellent for vibe coding, even on the free plan, but the real magic comes from how you use it. Starting with a clear, detailed plan saves you a huge amount of time later. Cursor will ask about architecture and implementation choices, so it's worth pausing to think through those options instead of picking the first thing that sounds fine. The more intentional you are early on, the fewer regrets you'll have down the line. Rules are another big time saver. Setting them up before you dive into coding leads to cleaner output and fewer rewrites, so don't skip that step. And as Cursor generates code, actually read what it says. Review the diffs, understand the reasoning, and question anything that feels off. Accepting everything blindly might feel faster in the moment, but it usually costs more time later. Testing is essential too, both your own manual testing and asking Cursor to generate test files, like unit tests or Playwright Jasmine suites. They help you catch regressions early and avoid breaking older functionality without noticing. Sometimes you'll hit a point where you keep asking the agent to fix something, but nothing changes, or things get worse. That happened to me at the end of this video, right when my free quota ran out. I switched to GitHub Copilot and hit the same issue again, but eventually fixed it. In moments like that, trying a different model can help, or you can just jump into the code yourself. Honestly, fixing it manually is often faster and helps you understand your own project instead of relying on the agent as a black box. Overall, I genuinely recommend Cursor, and if you find yourself using it a lot, the paid tier might be worth it.